Hey everyone, welcome back to the Quantum Tech Sage. In this video, we're going to build something genuinely useful, an app that connects Claude AI to your Microsoft Outlook inbox and automatically summarizes your emails. No more opening Outlook and staring at a sea of unread messages. Instead, you just ask Claude, "What do I need to act on today?" And it reads your inbox and tells you. We're going to build this from scratch, step by step, using something called the Model Context Protocol, or MCP, which is how you give Claude the ability to interact with external services like email, calendars, and databases. By the end of this video, you'll have a working app running on your own machine. So let's get into it. Here's the architecture of what we're building. 3 components: Microsoft Outlook, an MCP server, and Claude. Outlook holds your emails and exposes them through Microsoft's Graph API. The MCP server is a small Node.js app we'll write ourselves. It acts as a bridge, translating between Microsoft Graph and the MCP protocol that Claude understands. Claude Desktop, which is the app you install on your Mac or Windows machine, connects to our MCP server and gains the ability to call 2 tools we'll define: list_emails, which fetches recent messages from your inbox, and get_email, which retrieves the full body of any individual email. When you type a prompt into Claude like, "Summarize my inbox," Claude decides which tools to call, reads the responses, and writes you a clean natural language summary. You never have to write the parsing logic yourself. Claude handles all of that. Over the next slides, we'll build each layer. Let's start with the Azure setup. Before we write any code, let's check your setup. You'll need Node.js version 18 or later. Run node -- version in your terminal to check. If you're on an older version, head to nodes.org and grab the latest LTS release. You also need the Claude Desktop app. That's available at claude.ai/download, and a text editor. I'll be using VS Code. For accounts, you need a Microsoft 365 account or a free Outlook.com account, plus access to the Azure portal at portal.azure.com. Both are free to sign up for if you don't have them. Knowledge-wise, I'm assuming you're comfortable with basic JavaScript and Node.js, and that you've used a terminal before. You don't need to know anything about MCP or Microsoft Graph. We'll cover everything as we go. Right. Let's set up Azure. To call Microsoft Graph, we need to register an app in Azure. Don't worry. This is all free and takes about 2 minutes. Head to portal.azure.com and sign in. In the search bar at the top, type App Registrations and click it. Then hit New Registration. Give your app a name. I'm calling mine Outlook MCP app. For the supported account types, choose Accounts in any organizational directory and Personal Microsoft accounts. This means your app will work whether you're using a work account or a personal Outlook.com account. Under Redirect URI, choose Public Client/Native from the dropdown and enter http://localhost as the URI. This is needed for the OAuth flow we'll use on the desktop. After registering, go to API Permissions in the left sidebar. Click Add a Permission. Choose Microsoft Graph. Then Delegated Permissions. Search for and add mail.read. If you have admin rights, you can grant admin consent here too. Otherwise, users will be prompted when they first log in. Finally, and this is important, go to the Overview tab and copy your application client ID. It's a long UUID. Keep this handy. You'll need it in a moment. Great. Azure is done. Now let's write some code. Let's create the project. Open your terminal and run these commands. mkdir outlook-mcp, then cd into it, npm init-y to create a package.json. Then install our 3 dependencies: the MCP SDK from Anthropic, the MSAL Node library for Microsoft authentication, and Node-fetch for making API calls. Create 2 files: index.js which will be our main server file, and .env, which will hold our secrets. Open package.json and add type:module. This enables ES module imports, which the MCP SDK requires. Also add a start script that runs node.index.js. Now open that .env file and add 3 variables, client_ID. Paste in the application ID you copied from Azure. Tenant_ID. Set this to the word common, which allows both personal and work Microsoft accounts. And redirect _URI set to http://localhost. One crucial thing, add .env to your .gitignore file before you do anything else. Never commit your client ID to a public repository. With the project scaffolded, let's write the authentication code. Authentication is handled by Microsoft's MSAL library, the Microsoft Authentication Library. Here's how the flow works. On first run, the app tries to acquire a token silently using a cached account. If there's no cache yet, it falls back to an interactive login. MSAL opens a browser window. The user signs into their Microsoft account, consents to the mail.read permission, and an access token is returned to our app. On every subsequent run, the token is refreshed silently from the cache. Let's create a file called auth.js. We import public client application from MSAL and configure it with our client ID and tenant ID from the .env file. We export an async function called getAccessToken. It first tries acquire token silent using any cached account. If that fails, which it will on first run, you'd trigger the interactive device code flow. I've kept this simplified here. In the full code in the GitHub repo, the complete interactive fallback is included. The important thing is the scopes we request. Mail.read and offline_access. Mail.read gives us permission to read emails. Offline_access allows us to get a refresh token so the user doesn't have to log in every time. Let's move on to defining the MCP tools themselves. Now for the fun part, defining the tools that Claude will be able to call. We're exposing 2 tools. The first is list_emails. This takes an optional count parameter, a number specifying how many emails to fetch. It returns an array of email objects with the subject, sender, date, and a short preview snippet. The second is get_email. This takes a required ID parameter, the Graph API message ID, and returns the full body of that email. Claude uses this when it needs to read a specific message in detail. In index.js, we create a new MCP server instance with a name and version. Then we register a handler for the list tools request schema. This is how Claude asks, "What tools do you have?" And our server responds with the JSON schema definitions for both tools. This schema is important. Claude reads it to understand what parameters each tool accepts and what they mean. A good description in the schema helps Claude decide when and how to use the tool correctly. Don't skip the description fields. With the tool definitions in place, we now wire up the actual logic. What happens when Claude calls one of these tools? We register a handler for the call tool request schema. Every time Claude invokes a tool, this handler fires. The first thing we do is get an access token, calling our getAccessToken function from auth.js. For the list_emails tool, we build a Microsoft Graph URL targeting the inbox messages endpoint. We use the $top parameter to limit the number of results and the $select parameter to specify exactly which fields we want, subject from, receive date time, and body preview. Fetching only what we need keeps the response compact, which is important because this data is passed into Claude's context window. We parse the response, map it into clean objects, and return the result wrapped in an MCP content block with type text. That's the format Claude expects. For get_email, we hit the individual message endpoint using the ID passed in by Claude and return the full HTML body content. Notice we're not doing any summarization here ourselves. We're just returning raw data. Claude does all the reading, reasoning, and summarization. Our job is purely to be a clean data pipe. Let's now connect this to Claude Desktop. To connect our server to Claude Desktop, we edit a JSON configuration file that tells Claude where to find our MCP server. The file location depends on your operating system. On Mac OS, it's in your home directory under library/application support/Claude. On Windows, it's in appdata/roaming/Claude. On Linux, it's in .config/Claude. All three locations use the same file name, Claude_desktop_config.json. Open that file, create it if it doesn't exist, and add an MCP servers block like this. Give your server a key name. I'm using Outlook-Summariser. Set the command to node, and in the args array, provide the absolute path to your index.js file. Important: use the full absolute path, not a relative one. Claude Desktop doesn't know your working directory. In the env block, pass in your client_ID and tenant_ID. This way you're not hard-coding them in the JS file. Now fully quit Claude Desktop. Not just close the window, but quit it entirely from the system tray or menu bar. And relaunch it. When it loads, you should see a small plug icon in the chat input bar. Click it, and you should see Outlook Summariser listed. That means Claude can now use your tools. Let's test it. Now let's look at how to get the most out of this. The beauty of MCP is that you interact with your tools through natural language. You describe what you want, and Claude decides how to use the tools to achieve it. The simplest prompt is, list my 10 most recent emails and give me a one-sentence summary of each. Claude will automatically call list_emails with count 10, read the JSON response, and write you a clean numbered list. No additional code required. For a triage view, try. Fetch my last 20 emails, categorize each as action needed, FYI, newsletter, or spam. For action items, note the deadline if one is mentioned. Claude structures the output so you can scan it in 30 seconds. For a deep dive on a specific email, you can say, find the email about the Q3 board meeting and give me a detailed summary. Claude will first call list_emails to scan subjects, identify the right email, then call get_email to read the full body before summarizing. 2 tool calls, orchestrated automatically. And for a daily briefing, try the morning prompt on screen here. This combines filtering by time, categorization, and task extraction in a single request. It's a genuinely powerful inbox workflow. Let me show you what Claude actually produces. Here's an example of what Claude actually outputs. You can see that Claude called the list_emails tool automatically. You can see that in the tool use indicator in the chat, and then produced a clean numbered list. Each entry has the sender, subject, and a one-sentence summary. For item 1, Claude has identified this as an action item that needs sign-off by Friday. For item 3, it's flagged the invoice and noted the action. These aren't things I programmed. Claude inferred them from the email context. In your real demo session, you'll also see the raw JSON that came back from your MCP server, collapsed under a tool use expander. It's useful to show this to viewers so they understand what's happening under the hood. The key takeaway is that zero summarization logic lives in your code. Our server returns plain JSON. Claude does all the reading, reasoning, and formatting. This is the power of building on top of a capable language model, rather than trying to hard-code all the logic yourself. Once you've got the basics working, there are some natural extensions that make this genuinely production-ready. The most obvious is adding a reply_email tool. Request the mail.send permission in Azure. Add the tool definition, and now Claude can draft and send replies on your behalf. You describe the reply you want in natural language. Claude writes it and sends it. Huge time saver. You can also add a calendar integration by hitting the /calendar/events endpoint in Microsoft Graph. Claude can then cross-reference emails with your calendar. For example, do I have a meeting about the budget email this week? For a fully automated workflow, use the Claude API directly, not Claude Desktop, with a scheduled cron job. Every morning at 7 a.m., your script calls Claude with a prompt asking it to read and summarize overnight emails, and emails you the digest. You don't have to open any app. You could also open source your MCP server on GitHub and let the community contribute connectors for Gmail, Slack, Notion, or whatever services they use. The MCP ecosystem is growing fast, and the pattern we've used here, define tools, expose data, let Claude reason, applies to virtually any API you want to connect Claude to. Let's recap what we built today. We registered an Azure app and configured mail.read permissions. We built a Node.js MCP server exposing two tools, list_emails and get_email. We handled OAuth authentication using the MSAL library. We connected everything to Claude Desktop via the config file. We wrote natural language prompts to summarize and triage our inbox. And we explored extensions including email replies, calendar integration, and scheduled digests. For full source code, drop us an email at quantumtechsage@gmail.com. If you found this useful, please hit the like button. It genuinely helps the channel. Subscribe if you want to see more hands-on AI tutorials like this one. Next video, we're going to do the same thing but for Gmail, using a different OAuth flow and Google's API. Drop any questions in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.